I don't believe that the crises we faced can be fixed by technology, but technology happens to be my background. And so I feel, as I felt deeply into my heart and into my soul about how to respond to the plethora of issues we face, that I just, those are the gifts I can bring. So I've been inspired by this vision of the Memetic Activation Platform for a number of years. It really feels like this is the year that it needs to be put into use. Um, and so I'm very focused now on not talking about it so much as building it. And over the last month, especially, we've made some changes in how we're running the Planet project that's freed up some more time. And I've made some other decisions to prioritize it so that I really can bring the map into manifestation. So I appreciate the opportunity today to share something that's really close to my heart and really close, to my passion and what I feel to be my role in the world. But let me start with just sort of introducing what is this Memetic Activation Platform. It's very extensible. It's very wide open. It can be used for a lot of different things. So I find it challenging to describe it. But one way I tell the story is the map is focused on bringing agency to imagination. And that can be individual agency to individual imagination. So really bringing your own inspirations into the world in such a way that they can have impact. It can also mean refining individual imagination with others and co-creating and synthesizing into collective imagination. It can mean supporting the process of self-organizing into groups so that we can amplify our agency. And then finally, it also supports bringing collective agency to collective imagination so that we can realize our collective vision at scale. And when I say at scale, I mean at planetary scale. So in the session that you all watched, I'm just going to do a quick summary of that. It was focused, as you know, on a major focus of the Design School for Regenerating Earth, Joe Brewer and Penny Heipel's community. And so I sort of anchored the talk into their vision. But if you look at the characteristics of what they believe is the Earth regeneration requirements, if you will, they align in many contexts. And I could have as easily anchored it in other contexts. But it really points to the fact that our current economic system is systemically designed to be extractive, exploitative, to create polarization of wealth by design, to foster hoarding. There's pathological characteristics of our economic system. And I at least don't believe, and many others don't believe, that we can save the earth and the living systems on it and within it, unless we can invent new economic system. And it's probably not one new economic system. We've tried the monoculture of the global economy. We probably need a polyculture of different approaches to our economic system. We need a period of experimentation where we can find out what works and what doesn't. We need to be able to reclaim our sovereignty, our personal sovereignty, reclaim control over our information and how it gets used and how it's shared, but similarly to group sovereignty and groups of groups that are produced through synergy and collaboration, that relate all sources of value instead of reducing everything to just a number, a dollar, a monetary quantitative unit. We need to recognize that there are multiple sources of value. The land itself can be a bank, but it's a bank of natural capital. Land-based regenerative projects, I could talk at some length about the importance I'm seeing in this place-based way of organizing, and with a real focus on regenerating the earth. Fractal nesting of groups, evolutionary, bringing coherence to this evolutionary process, and again, doing so at global scale. So in the first session, I talked about, brought in a lot of Roger's work with the extent to which the meta crisis is rooted ultimately in a mindset, in a set of principles, deeply held assumptions that have informed civilization for the last 5,000 years. And that if we're to avoid a complete civilizational collapse, we need a profound shift of culture at global scale. And on the Planet Project, we refer to that emerging culture that is spontaneously emerging in response to the many crises. We refer to that as the planetary culture. The vision there is a flourishing Earth instead of a degrading Earth. We drilled in a little bit into the essential memetic shifts, from the meme of separation to the meme of partnership, to unity or interconnectedness, from the meme of domination to the meme of partnership, and from the meme of exploitation to the meme of caring or reverence or the sacred regard for all life. So those were sort of the core mindset shifts of this thing we call the Great Transition. And we talked about, yes, there are crises, and you can try and motivate people out of fear of collapse. But fear is not a good mindset to trigger creative expression. So what I like to try and emphasize is the extraordinary opportunity we have in front of us, and I'll reinforce that again in a moment. So we do face this unprecedented opportunity. We are so fortunate to be alive right now. And then I shared how that recognition still left me with the sense of, but what's my role in all of this? What can I do? And I think many are asking themselves that question. We explored a little bit of the characteristics of Joe Brewer's vision for this Earth regeneration ecosystem. And we said that requires a new kind of enterprise. Meeting these requirements can't be done with the kinds of top-down organizations rooted in the current economic system of competition and domination. We need a new kind of enterprise to create a flourishing Earth. And that new enterprise requires a new mindset, a shift from the problem-solving mindset that sees everything in terms of problems to be solved, to more of an evolutionary mindset, a sense and respond and adapt mindset. And we said this new kind of enterprise also needs a new architecture. Instead of the application-centric architecture that leads to tech giants with all the power and the consolidation of power in a small number of giant organizations, we need a person-centric architecture. We need a different way of imagining the internet, a different architecture, if you will, for the internet that's rooted and centered in the person. And we need a realization of that platform, of that architecture, in the form of a new platform. That's what the map is. I'm quick to say I don't believe I have the answer, and I'm not suggesting the map is the only platform we need, but I do think it can be a powerful enabler. And that's what's been inspiring me for the last close to a decade. So I want to return to that notion of the very different future we could have. If we can just enable and empower coherent and cooperative collective action at all scales. Well, that's a big if, but if we could, again, from individual people through families, small social groups, all the way up to commons and bioregions, and in fact, planetary organisms. then just imagine the culture we could have if we weren't burdened by our current economic system, our current concept of money, our current technology ecosystem, our agricultural systems, our educational systems, our governance systems. The depth of our current crises, this seems crazy. For many, this is typical Horizon 3, insanity. the mainstream, this seems like complete pipe dreams, completely unrealistic. And if it was just me doing it, then I'd say, yeah, lock me up, man. But the good news is there's people all over the world for which these are very real and accessible and available possibilities if we can just collaborate and cooperate. So, what if we imagine a culture rooted in and expressions of and serving to reinforce and sustain the memes of planetary culture? What if our civilization were designed around partnership, interconnection, and reverence for all life? That's the question that animated me and led to this inspiration that I call the Memetic Activation Platform. I don't claim ownership of it. I don't claim it's my idea. I very much feel like it's the evolutionary process reaching expression through me. I just feel like I downloaded, I just got to channel this. It came to me over the course of 6 months in almost full form. That was, 7 or 8 years ago. I've been working since to try and manifest it. But it's an application services platform whose goal is to foster the emergence of self-organizing evolutionary transformation at personal, interpersonal, organizational, interorganizational, and ultimately global levels. So it's a platform for Horizon 3. We talked about these horizons and the different structures. It's really building the new model that makes the old models obsolete. So I'm not trying to fight against or compete against current initiatives. I'm aiming at this new civilization. What does it require from a technology standpoint? And trying to aim at delivering on that set of requirements. So it's open source, it's open-ended and extensible. And I sometimes talk for about an hour about what that means because it's so important. But today I'll just leave it at it's very critical that it's not constrained by the imagination of the designers. It's an open-ended, continuously extensible capability. Instead of being decentralized on gigantic servers, it's decentralized. Instead of being application-centric, it's an expression of this person-centric architecture. It's very deeply patterned after living systems. So every time I ran into difficult design problems, I looked to 4.5 billion years of evolution for patterns. How has evolution addressed these kinds of challenges in the past, and drawn inspiration from that? Beyond being just person-centric, it's life-centric, and it is evolvable. Now, one of the challenges in trying to describe the map is people want to pigeonhole it, want to put it in and say, well, what's your app? You've got an app, I've got an app, he's got an app, what's your app? And they come into it with that sort of narrowing lens, and then it just like kind of doesn't make sense. So I'll just tell you right up front, it is not an app. It's a platform that is an ecosystem enabler. So don't think of it as just a single app. It is an ecosystem enabler. So what I'd like to do is elaborate what I mean by that and go into some of the ecosystems that it enables. And let me just start with sort of the map core, which again, it's person-centric, it's adaptive, it's scalable, it supports self-sovereign agency, secure data storage, your data stored on your devices, not in some Amazon cloud or Google cloud or what have you. And it supports the ability to dynamically visualize information in the map in a way that's, again, not constrained by the imagination of a particular app developer. These visualizations are sort of plug and play, and they can be used to visualize any of the information in the map. And we'll talk more about that as we go. So that's sort of the core foundation of the map. And so one of the ecosystems is this, what I call empowered agents holarchy. It's not a hierarchy, it's a hierarchy of holons, if you will. A self-organizing network of social organisms. That starts with individual people, and we can self-organize into family groups, into friend groups, into communities of practice, into communities of place. And this can grow fractally to larger and larger groups that are interconnected. And so the map supports the ecosystem of evolving groups, of evolving social organisms, maybe organized by community weavers that help bring disillusioned individuals who are seeing and being depressed by the heartbreak of witnessing the collapse of our current civilization, and weave them into organizations, into social organisms that can activate them into roles, empowered roles, to realize this extraordinary opportunity, that I referred to earlier. Another ecosystem is the network of knowledge commons that I call the global meme pool. This is an ecosystem of gathering information from the many, many different thought leaders, some of whom are on this call, and making them available in an accessible form so they can be discovered by others. They can be discovered by all of the agents in the empowered agents holarchy ecosystem. And it allows thought leaders, any thought leader anywhere in the world, put their own ideas into the global meme pool. You got a better idea for how to do governance, how to do politics, how to do money, how to do the economy, how to do agriculture, how to do personal growth, how to, relational capacity. The sky's the limit. It's your imagination is the limit. But the idea is to allow thought leaders to put these ideas into the global meme pool, make them accessible. And there can be models where the usage of those ideas can result in various forms of reciprocal value flow. But this could include, for example, usage-based micropayments. The essence of this flow is that if the people that participate in the map ecosystems need to have a day job in the extractive, exploitative economy in order to put food on the table and shelter overhead and take care of their families and sort of realize their dreams, if they have to go there and then they, just donate time into this ecosystem, we're never going to get out from underneath the current system. So these ecosystems need to support the ability to earn a living, to put food on the table, to take care of our families within the ecosystem, reducing the dependence on the extractive, exploiting economy. So this is one example of that, where thought leaders can begin to get compensated for their creativity directly from this ecosystem. A third ecosystem is what I call the global service registry. You can think of this as a values-based marketplace. And in this marketplace, evolutionary storytellers or life scientists or media producers or artists or authors or anybody with a service, a gift they are ready to share with the world, can put their service into the service registry on their own terms. So they can bring products and services listed in the global service registry, and they decide what the reciprocal value flow. When you offer a service, you can decide to offer as a gift into a gift economy model. Maybe just in exchange for reputation. Could be conventional fiat dollars. It could be cryptocurrencies. It could be mutual credit-based currencies. There's a whole open range of ideas about how to do money that are put into the global meme pool by the people that are thinking about those sorts of things, on which you can draw to make an offering of your product and service into this global service registry based on those, cutting edge ideas or conventional ideas. It's up to you. You're a sovereign agent. You can decide how you want to offer your services. But the point is, the capacity to do so is available within the MAP ecosystem for you to put your product or service into the service registry and make it available to others in the empowered agents hierarchy. Software developers can also put apps into the global service registry. And again, they can get reciprocal value. So they can get paid, they can get a living, they can get reputation, they can get goodwill, they can get barter of goods, what have you, through bringing their apps into the global service registry, making them available to agents in the empowered agents hierarchy. So the essential model of the map is that agents can offer services and they can accept the offer of other agents, enter into agreements over which service invocations and reciprocal value can flow. The fourth ecosystem I'll talk about is the visualizers ecosystem. I touched on that a bit earlier. In the conventional architecture, you'll have whoever's developing an application craft the user interface to that specific application. When you look across the plethora of applications, as an individual, that means my user experience is fragmented. It's, a Facebook interface looks different than Amazon, looks different than LinkedIn, looks different than eBay, looks different than Google Mail, what have you. Each app has its own user interface. If we're going to empower people, and I talked about this in the last talk in the person-centric architecture, what if you could craft the visual experience that worked for you? Well, to do so, you'd need a set of choices. You need a commons of visualizers that you can select from and dynamically choose visualizers that fit with your needs, with your orientation to the world. And so we've decoupled in this architecture the visualizers ecosystem from the app ecosystem, from the data ecosystem, so that any visualizer can be brought to bear to visualize any of the information. That's another long topic, how that's possible and how that's worked, but I'll just leave it at that because I'm trying to keep this talk relatively non-technical. But this is an opportunity for human experience designers to contribute visualizers into the ecosystem, and they can get payments based on use. So they can support the ecosystem. And then finally, there's also bioregional resource commons. Commons are common pool resources with governance that are stewarded by stewards, I should say. And so a network of stewarded natural resources are these bioregional resource commons that are place-based, that are organized by landscape, by watershed, by ecoregion, ultimately up to bioregional scale and beyond, that can use the services from the global service registry, that can draw inspiration about how to do governance and how to do distribution of both resources and costs in an equitable way. They can draw that inspiration from the global meme pool. The stewards are groups. A commons basically is an agent group. It's a group of people that is agreeing to the rules of the commons honoring the stewardship and using it in accordance with the guidelines of the commons. So you can see that you have the empowered agents, the global services, the global meme pool, and visualization of what's going on in the bioregion is afforded by the visualization ecosystem. So you can see we have this network of ecosystems. And in the bioregional commons, we've got, say, landscape leaders who are doing stewardship, and they're getting stewardship credits. So again, it should be self-sufficient. The idea is this collection of ecosystems becomes self-sustaining. Now, it can get investment from awakened investors. I like John Fullerton's term. We can compost the dollars that were generated in the extractive economy and hoarded by the billionaires. We can compost those to seed the core and seed the virtuous spiral of these other ecosystems. But ultimately, we need to wean ourselves off of that. We need self-sustaining, mutually reinforcing ecosystems. And that is what the map is trying to enable. But I love this quote from Alice Walker because if we are going to self-organize, it means people need to step into their power. They need to take responsibility, recognize that they have responsibility. And what the map tries to do is put at their fingertips access to others that can help amplify their agency. But if you're not thinking you have any power, you won't even use it. So I love this quote: the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. So we're trying to suggest examples where the power exists. So how can we amplify sovereign agency? So a core concept of the map is this concept of an agent space. And an agent space could be one person could have their own agent space. And the map serves as a data manager, like it's your personal data manager that's scalable and self-sovereign. So it stores all of your data on your devices. It uses a technology called holochain to do that. So imagine if your personal knowledge, your own expression of your values, are what could be thought of as your memetic signature. What if all of your personal health records, your vaccination history, your diagnosis, your labs, all of your doctor's visits, what if instead of being fragmented across, multiple healthcare providers, all lived in your personal agent space? What if all your chats and emails and messages were stored in your agent space where only you could access them? Your financial information, your learning, your assets, the groups you're in, the services you're offering, and the services you're using. What if all of that information was stored in your personal agent space instead of fragmented across 50 different apps hosted on God knows what cloud someplace, right? Where do these things come from on the left? Well, remember that global service registry and sort of the software developers putting apps in there? That's an app store. As more and more apps get brought into the app store, there's more and more possibilities for the list on the left to grow. More and more then of your personal data begins to be pulled into your agent space instead of fragmented out across all these different tech giant clouds someplace. All of that information you can think of, and in fact, the map models it as an information graph. Unlike the Oracle e-business suite that I used when I was at Sun Microsystems, that has 20,000 different types of information in it, 20,000 database tables, the map has exactly one kind of database table. It's called a holon. Everything in the map is either a holon or a relationship between holons. And so all the plethora of information, this is part of the extensibility story, but these are self-describing holons. So you can say, oh, this is a book holon, or this is a landscape holon, or this is a governance model holon, or this is a community holon, what have you. But they're all describing, they they say this is the properties I have. These are the relationships I participate in. So you can every holon sort of carries its description with it, just as cells sort of carry their signature, their chemical signatures as they interact in the world. And so everything in the map can be represented as a form of graph, nodes and links, holons and holon relationships. And that makes it available to these ontology agnostic visualizers, which is a total mouthful. But all that really means is these are ways of visualizing information that do not depend upon a priori knowledge of the information you're trying to display. So if a book holon and a person holon, those are both different kinds of holons. They have different properties. They can participate in different relationships. But the description says, here's the properties and here's the relationships. And so you can have visualizers that visualize a holon. That's what a node visualizer is. A gallery is like a list of holons, list of nodes that you can see sort of in a gallery view. Or you could show them as a list, like a spreadsheet, or you can see them in a dashboard. You also can view this information as a graph. You can view it overlaid onto a geographic map. Any data that is georeferenced then can be shown geographically, and you can add multiple sort of cultural layers. You can layer multiple stories, scientific stories, biological stories, cultural stories into a geographic context to help reinforce and bring coherence to this sense of place. I use a knowledge management editor, a so-called PKM tool, personal knowledge management editor called Capacities. Others use things like Obsidian, Notion. There's a number of these out there that give you a lot of personalized control over managing your knowledge. And they do that with these things called markdown editors. Well, again, decoupling the visualizer from the app means that these kinds of markdown editors can be brought to bear to visualize and in some cases edit the information you see on the left-hand side. Finally, and this is what I've been pretty excited about recently, this is sort of a recent discovery, but within artificial intelligence systems, you've probably heard of these LLMs, these large language models that are enormously expensive to create, although DeepSeek from China seems to have found maybe a cheaper way of creating them. Nevertheless, they're heavily computationally intensive. They require a lot of resources. They take time, and they result, after you train them, then you sort of deploy the model. So all of the data that was used to train them, the billions and billions of documents used to train them, not available at runtime, just the sort of inferencing capacity that is incarnated in the LLM. But to give context-specific information to help make it more accurate, less hallucination, more relevant, there's another part of the AI architecture called a RAG, a retrieval augmented generation system. And there's sort of two fundamental technologies for doing that. And I won't go into the details, but one of those technologies is a knowledge graph on knowledge graph database like a Neo4j as one example. They have a query language that happens to be the very same query language that the map supports. It's called OpenCipher. There's a standard GQL that we're migrating to, but initially we're going to be supporting OpenCipher. What does that mean? That means it makes all of the information in your private agent space, all of this information on the left, accessible in a form that directly feeds into AI chats. So you can, the digital experience of the map, in this case, Louis, could be just an AI prompt where you just enter an English language question. And the difference is the answer to that question is informed by all of the knowledge, all of the information that is in your personal agent space. So this is your personal AI empowered knowledge base that really amplifies personal agency, right? But it turns out, yeah, that's putting AI in service to life instead of the other way around, which seems to be the dominant model. But remember this agent holarchy. We can self-organize into groups. And so now you can have apps. I didn't have space on the slide to show all the apps that are not just personal apps, but group apps, but all the group information now can be in the group's agent space. It forms a knowledge commons of the group. I can also choose to share a subset of my personal information into the group, but I'm not actually sharing my data. I'm sharing access to the data. Those little keys represented as cryptographically secured access to the data. I'm always in control of who can access my data. I can revoke access at any time. There's provenance about who has accessed it. So I'm not just giving it up someplace and then praying that they secure it and don't give it away or get hacked or what have you. I'm actually retain control while making a subset of my personal information available to the group. And the subset I make available, right, is going to be a function of the trust I have in the group. So small groups with which I'm intimately familiar, I'm much more willing to be vulnerable, much more willing to share information into. Larger groups that I don't know as well, I'm not going to be as disclosing. But the point is that both the knowledge and data of the group itself and all of the apps it uses, as well as the personal information that the members of the group are willing to share, are now available to the same set of visualizers, to the same knowledge management tools, to the same AI chatbot. So the same technical infrastructure that's used to bring AI power to my personal knowledge base can be brought to our group knowledge. And this scales to planetary level. We now have a planetary scale of groups and groups. If we can self-organize to that level with governance, with sovereignty, with aligned values, with decentralized models, operating under the memes of the planetary culture, that knowledge can be accessible to an AI chatbot without giving up sovereignty. And even at that level, I still have any of my personal information I'm sharing into the planetary knowledge commons. I can revoke whenever I want. I retain sovereignty. This is a picture I saw from that Bill Bowie from R3.0 shared. And you can't see the details of it, but it basically shows by number of people, powers of 10, 10 to the 0 to the 1. So 10, 0, 1 person, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, and so forth. These are all the different scale of groups. I didn't have room on this slide to show them, but between the family level group and a planetary scale group, there's a whole mesoscale set of structures, right? Of nested larger and larger groups, each with their own level of trust, each of which I'm willing to share information to, but that enables planetary cooperation outside the control of the dominant economic paradigm, outside control of the sensors, all available through the AI capacities.